Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I want to, on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco, offer my condolences to the family of our Senator, our Mayor, Dianne Feinstein, who we all knew and loved, who passed away this morning. Today, we take a moment to pause and reflect on her legacy, but I want to make sure that we talk about especially all the extraordinary work that she did to lead our city for so many years during very challenging times. Today, we have lowered the flags in our various city departments and fire and police stations and other areas to half-mast in her honor. We will have a book of condolences for her, for the public to come and to sign. It will be located in San Francisco City Hall on the 4th floor for visitors and others to come by, to take a moment to reflect and to pay their respects. And I just want to take us back to a very challenging time in our city's history. Many of us remember in the 1970s, in 1978 in particular, when we were still struggling with what was happening during the massacre of Jonestown. Senator Dianne Feinstein was at that time president of the Board of Supervisors, and the city was hit hard with the loss of over 800 people. And less than a little bit after 10 days, then we had, unfortunately, the assassination of Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk. And instantly, our then president of the Board of Supervisors became the mayor. And at that time, helping the city to deal with these two extraordinary challenges, you know, the loss of such life, such tremendous life, the loss of our leadership, she stepped up, she led with courage, she worked hard for the city, she was a beacon of hope and inspiration during a very dark and tragic time, which cemented her legacy as an extraordinary leader for our city and for our country. Dianne Feinstein never stopped being mayor. She was mayor in San Francisco for about 10 years before she became our senator. And I want to just talk about what she meant to San Francisco as a mayor, leading us through tragedy during a dark time, focusing on the important things that matter to communities, that matter to our city, pushing policies and legislation, and bringing excitement and joy. We just celebrated the 45th anniversary of Pier 39, and we talked about Senator Feinstein and her work and her visionary leadership and how Pier 39 exists because she was willing to take risks despite all the pushback that came with moving forward with such an extraordinary project, one that we now enjoy as one of the second largest tourist attractions in San Francisco after the Golden Gate Bridge. She also was a champion for our cable car system. The cable cars were invented in San Francisco. And when we were moving towards the future and looking at alternative, more efficient and fast transportation systems, Dianne Feinstein wanted to make sure that we showed tremendous support and respect for an iconic mode of transportation in San Francisco, and worked with both the public and private sector to raise the necessary funds to save our cable cars, which so many visitors continue to enjoy in San Francisco. You can't think about San Francisco without thinking about Dianne Feinstein and how she has consistently been a champion for people, for neighborhoods, for bridge building, for all the things that have made our city such an incredible city over the years. And I want to just also take us back to when I was a kid And when I was excited about playing for Dianne Feinstein, the mayor of San Francisco, the first woman mayor of San Francisco, I was in the Ben Franklin Middle School band. I played French horn. And we worked so hard to get ready to play for her right here at City Hall. We were known as Dianne Feinstein's band. Anytime there was any event, activity, or what have you, we basically were chosen as the band to perform for any occasion. And I remember begging my grandmother, begging her to get me some new pantyhose. I remember begging my grandmother for something new to look nice for the mayor. And she, in fact, bought the band sweaters that we wore that day. The band sweaters that we wore so proudly. And there was a level of pride to be in front of the mayor, to watch the mayor witness us play, and she was so proud of us, and she said so, and she took the time to talk to us, express how amazing we were, and to remind us that we were her band. Jack Martins was our conductor, he was our teacher, he was our friend, he loved her so. And in fact, when the 49ers won the Super Bowl, and she loved the San Francisco 49ers, they had a big celebration at the Fairmont Hotel. And you know that the Ben Franklin Middle School band was right there to play for her. She stopped by to say hi to us. She made sure she brought over Joe Montana. And let me tell you, that was one of the best moments of my life. I still remember it today. Growing up in San Francisco, she was always someone we looked up to, so much so that when she ran for senator, we helped in her campaign. I remember doing the envelopes and doing whatever it took. She was the first woman to really step out and to do this extraordinary work, both as president of the Board of Supervisors, as mayor of San Francisco, as the senator for the state of California. And just last night, she was on the Senate floor casting votes because she truly believed in doing her duty, being an extraordinary public servant, and it is clear that she cared about making a difference in the lives of so many. One of the first things that she did when she was on when she began to serve as a U.S. Senator, we were experiencing in 1992 the tragedy of what happened with 101 California. And the work that she did to get an assault rifle ban in place was extraordinary, especially at that time. She did it because she knew how important it was. She was constantly courageous, and she continued to push the envelope, build relationships across the aisle. She worked hard to work with other people because ultimately she wanted to accomplish things. She is truly a role model. She is an amazing individual, and so many of us, especially in the city and county of San Francisco, will miss her dearly. It wasn't just because of the work she did. It was because of the love and the compassion that she shared for so many people. And before I open it up to questions, I'll just say, you know, Dianne Feinstein never stopped being mayor. Whether she was calling me to ask for something to be done or calling my chief of staff, Sean Ellsberg, who used to work for her, and any little thing was not too little for Dianne Feinstein. If there was something wrong with a sidewalk, a corner, an issue, it did not matter. She took the time because she cared so deeply about seeing San Francisco look and feel good and wanted to make sure that what we were doing here on the local level was a great example of how to make significant changes, and she wanted us to make those changes and make San Francisco look and feel good for everyone who was a part of the fabric of San Francisco. I also want to say that she built so many extraordinary relationships, international relationships. She made San Francisco an international destination. In fact, the Shanghai sister city relationship, Senator Dianne Feinstein developed that along with other sister city relationships to recognize the diversity and how important it is to bridge the gap between communities in our city. I can go on and on about how so many of the things that she did here locally as mayor set the tone for what San Francisco has become and will continue to be, a beacon of hope for so many people for years to come. And so I want to again thank you all for being here to recognize Senator Dianne Feinstein and her legacy in San Francisco. We are again honoring her by lowering the flags at half-mast. We will have a condolence book on the 4th floor at noon for people who want to visit and sign the book and pay their respects. We will share that book with the public, and we will share that book with her family. And we are not aware of the specifics as it relates to her services, but we will definitely provide that information as soon as it is made available to us. So again, thank you all for being here today.
Not lost on me that on the wall behind you are the 2 women leaders of the city amongst so many men. Can you talk a little bit about her inspiration to you, perhaps, to be a leader as a woman in San Francisco and in California?
Well, I remember when I was president of the Board of Supervisors and sadly Ed Lee passed away. And one of the first calls I got was from Senator Dianne Feinstein. And we had a very long discussion about just what she went through, how she made decisions, how difficult it was. And she provided that support and that mentorship to make sure that I was prepared to step up at a difficult time for our city. And so we built it, there was a bond that we established because of that, me being the second woman and what that meant. You know, she was very proud and very happy to see me in this role. She supported me wholeheartedly, and we had regular discussions over the years about different things related to San Francisco. Of course, many of her ideas of what could be done, but it was not ever lost on me. You know, becoming mayor for me was just incredible. I never thought someone like me from public housing could be mayor, and we talked about even the work she did across the street from the projects I grew up in. The Pink Palace was notorious, even more so at the time than where I lived, even though they both were pretty challenging. And what she did to turn that public housing development into senior homes, which it is still to this very day, and has made parts of that area a lot safer. So we had a great relationship. We talked about, you know, how harder it could be for a woman, and some of those, you know, very private and intimate moments around the differences and what that would entail, including how people might treat you. And she just offered some really great advice to just stay the course, focus on the work, you know, be courageous, do the best you can, take care of the city. She was always focused on the city, and she was also focused on me in terms of a person and saying to make sure that I take care of myself too. So I always appreciated her guidance, her support, and more importantly, you know, the fact that I follow in her footsteps. And as I said earlier, her legacy, because of what she did for San Francisco during such a very challenging time, is cemented in our history. And again, when the pandemic occurred, she immediately reached out to me before I could reach out to her. There was immediate phone call directly to talk about, you know, the hard decisions that needed to be made, what it takes, do the right thing, do what's necessary for the city, because as you can remember, during the beginning of the pandemic, when we first declared a state of emergency, there was so much pushback. When we moved forward to be the first major city in this country to go shelter in place, there was major pushback. And she said that use the experts, use the data, focus on the science, and do what's right for San Francisco. And so I'll always remember that during the most difficult times, when things were challenging, I never had to pick up the phone and call her. She always immediately picked up the phone. She always had San Francisco top of mind, and I know that her legacy is what she did for this city, what she did for this country, and how she was a constant inspiration and strength for so many of us, especially women who are looking to seek office, women who are moving forward in this political world, or who are too often challenged in other ways. I mean, she stayed the course, and can you imagine in the 1970s, I mean, she first became a member of the Board of Supervisors in 1969, the work that she did and had to do to get to any place. She even when she lost a campaign, that was a source of inspiration. When she lost, when she ran for mayor, when she lost, when she ran for governor, she did not give up. She did not walk away. She stayed the course. And look at all the extraordinary work that we benefited from because of her commitment and her courage. That is what I look to when I think about Dianne Feinstein, especially the fact that she's a woman, and she was an incredible source of strength for me, and I know for so many women around the world.
Mayor Breed, what was the last thing that the senator called you about? You said she called you about things in San Francisco all the time. Do you recall like one of the last few things that she called your office to ask about or to push?
Well, she talked about what was going on and what APEC would mean for San Francisco. She really had an extraordinary commitment to our international presence and relationship. And so the conversation around, whatever she can do, how she can be supported, she agreed to be a part of our host committee. She was committed to making sure that San Francisco looked and felt good, and for all of these foreign leaders who were coming to our city, and just also discussed even some of her own relationships with some of those leaders, and some of those leaders here locally offering advice on who could be a part of the work that we're doing to make APEC a huge success. So there's so many conversations. That was probably the one that I remember in terms of maybe being the last, but there were always numerous conversations.
Remember the last small one, like something that is just like so like intimate, like you mentioned potholes or like fixing a street.
I want to wait on sharing that because it involves her family, and I think I mean, as you know, her daughter serves as one of our commissioners, and it was very sweet and very personal. So I really appreciate all that she's done, all the advice she's provided, but most of the time, it was always about the city, always about what I needed to do, in a very loving way. And she was just really an amazing source of strength. So I will always remember and appreciate her so much.
Mayor Breed, obviously today is a day of remembrance and mourning. However, the governor does have a major decision to make regarding Senator Feinstein's replacement. Have you spoke with the governor about that yet? Do you have any thoughts of some of the names being mentioned? And you yourself are being mentioned as, would you accept that position if Governor Newsom asked you to?
Well, I will just say that today we need to make sure that we take a moment and focus on Senator Feinstein's legacy, and that conversation could be saved for another day. I want to really, truly make sure that, that's the governor's responsibility, and I'm sure he is already working on it and doing what he needs to do. But so many of us, including Governor Newsom, had great relationships with Feinstein and her family, and we want to take a moment to just really make this about her legacy, and everything she's done before we move to that chapter.
Mayor Breed, can you speak to when you first heard the news this morning, what went through your head, some of the emotional side of that?
Well, some of the first thought to me was her family, her daughter, her granddaughter, and, her close friends and the people who really loved and care about her. I also thought about my chief of staff who worked closely with her as well, and just what people were going through and what that would mean. I thought about some of the other mayors who, I had a chance to reach out to, and had a conversation with former Mayor Willie Brown. I received a number of phone calls, text messages, and just, really thought about, all the people that loved Senator Feinstein so. and including so many San Franciscans. I mean, again, we were at Pier 39 yesterday, and her name was mentioned. We were celebrating the anniversary of the cable car, and her name was mentioned. Like, all of these things that she had a role in various capacities, you know, she really is a part of the fabric of San Francisco. So what went through my head is how important it is that we do justice to her legacy, how important it is that we show respect to the people who loved her so much, and it was also really important that we give the public an opportunity to express themselves, because there are so many people that have feelings about what they want to say. And I mentioned earlier how I played in the advanced band at Benjamin Franklin Middle School, and how I was thinking about Mr. Martins and people who played for Dianne Feinstein, people who I grew up with. And so I know there's a lot of feelings and emotions going on, and I just think it's so important today that we really, truly try to focus on Senator Feinstein and her legacy.
Do you know what opportunities there will be for the public to mourn her here in San Francisco moving forward, when there will be a funeral or any services?
Yes, and I said earlier, today we will have a condolence book on the 4th floor at noon for people to come by and to sign. We moved it upstairs. We wanted people to have a peaceful place. There's a lot of activity still going on in City Hall. On the first floors and other areas, and that is the most, you know, quiet area of City Hall, which is why we're putting it there. That'll be at noon today. We lowered the flags at half-mast in all of our various city buildings, and we know that the president has also issued that order. And ultimately, as soon as we are able to confirm with the family the plans for the services and what might happen, we will immediately share that with the public.
She had a long tenure in the Senate. She obviously was very intimate with the city of San Francisco. You mentioned this a little bit earlier. Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, I know part of her legacy is this service, but I mean, there's some challenges now in her absence. Can you talk a little bit about meetings? What are some of the initial challenges in her absence that you're like, I'm not going to have her phone call to help with that?
Well, I'll just say that, you know, there will always be challenges, right? There will always be issues that we have to confront. And ultimately, I think that, you know, some of us knew her well enough in some ways to know sometimes what she would say or how she would feel about something. And we will make decisions accordingly. And I think that...
Is that her lasting legacy?
I think, you know, that could be attributed to her legacy, because she was consistent. She was consistent in who she was. She was, you know, just really a constant presence of strength. She was always consistently focused on San Francisco. And yes, she was a senator, so she focused on a lot of international foreign affairs, you know, healthcare, all the things that matter to people, changes to our gun laws, trying to work with Republicans and, you know, supporting Democratic causes. So we know it was not even a question about who she was. And I do think that that is definitely a part of her legacy.
You mentioned she was very focused on San Francisco. What are the main issues that she would talk to you about recently that she was concerned about with San Francisco?
Well, mostly, I would say, you know, again, APEC was something that she cared about and what that would mean for the city. She wanted us to, you know, continue to stay the course on the work that we were doing in the Tenderloin community and what was happening there. You know, she was, you know, not, you know, happy about sometimes some of the criticism of San Francisco, mostly because, you know, some of it was not necessarily entirely accurate. And sometimes felt like San Francisco was, you know, being used in the political arena in an unfair, unjust way. But ultimately, it was always, you know, something related to the city. And sometimes it was something small, and sometimes it was something large. So it varied. Every issue varied. Whether it was, you know, I'll give you an example of one that she worked so hard for. She had a great relationship with former Supervisor Willie B. Kennedy. And so when we were fighting for neighborhood preference, I wasn't even mayor, I was on the board of supervisors. And her office, I mean, and this is the Pink Palace, the place where she spearheaded the change from what it was to affordable housing for seniors. And when we talked about adding another, 98 units on the property, we wanted to use neighborhood preference to ensure that residents had access to those units. And let me tell you, she was very aggressive about helping us get to yes when HUD told us no. So that is really just what she did. It was helping us with various issues, agreeing to be part of the solutions of the things that we're trying to do. So it really varied. When we needed either a letter or some support for financial resources, when threats of our support was being made for our transportation. I remember when Caltrain was in jeopardy of losing some already awarded critical funding, and Feinstein was very aggressive, meeting with other senators to push back on that and to get those monies saved. So it was both the things related to San Francisco, but also just the work that she had to do as a senator and always be willing, there was never a time when we reached out to her and her office, there was never a time that she said no. When there were things that San Francisco needed as it relates to policy, as it relates to funding, whatever the case is, those were also things that she worked very hard on.
Mary, you keep saying stay the course. Is that something that she told you frequently?
Oh, definitely. I mean, stay the course is, the work has to go on. And, she was casting votes yesterday. She was casting votes on the Senate floor yesterday. This is what she wanted to do. She wanted to fulfill her obligation that she made to the people of the state of California. She wanted to keep going and do her term, and she did it to the very end. And that is, again, truly a testament to her strength of spirit and also to her consistency in wanting to see the work get done.
Do you think it was unfair sometimes people asking that she should consider retiring? I mean, you're talking about her voting all the way up to the last day of her life. That was some of the calls in the last few years. Do you think that those calls were unfair?
I think, unfortunately, it was disappointing to see, the overwhelming support and the push in that direction. Again, going back to what she's done, her strength, and especially as a woman, because, sometimes you don't always see that happen in the same way for men who are in the Senate. And ultimately, I think that she did what she felt was best to do, and she, I think, in her last vote, demonstrated that she was going to do exactly what she wanted and needed to do to the very end.
People have been talking negatively about San Francisco quite a lot on the national level recently, especially from critics, saying, San Francisco has lost its specialness. She often spoke and fought for recognition of San Francisco's specialness. Can you talk about that? Can you talk about any conversations you had with her about keeping San Francisco vital?
Yeah, and I'll just say again what I said earlier, just in terms of how nowadays the desire to find something in San Francisco and San Francisco used in that way, and part of the conversations around, the political people who have gone on to do, like Senator Feinstein, Kamala Harris, who's our vice president, Gavin Newsom, who's our governor, and who, these are really, really incredible people, who come out of San Francisco, who become trailblazers and leaders on a national stage in our country, and the belief that San Francisco is, unfortunately, sometimes the target, because the goal is to stop that from happening and to stop the various people who come out of San Francisco and end up in these extraordinary positions from being as effective, and to point to San Francisco in that way. But the fact is, we all know, and people especially who come to San Francisco, we all know that San Francisco, like other major cities, experience challenges. And in fact, I was downtown at one of the office buildings meeting with some folks who worked there and a person who moved here from New York. And, he said, because he's like, they're always saying, well, is everything okay? He's like, this is better than New York. This is better than what I've experienced in any other major city. And he said, I'm not saying that there aren't issues, but in comparison, it's not what people think, especially in all parts of the city. There's just a narrative that has been created out there with many people who have not been here, and sometimes press who don't live here, who don't walk the streets, who don't catch the buses, who don't have the everyday average experience of San Franciscans. And so my hope is that, with what she did and what she, did, to talk about, to elevate San Francisco, because she was in D.C., but she was in San Francisco. She lived in San Francisco, and she spent a lot of time around San Francisco, especially when she was here. She was always happy to go out to dinner. People would probably see her at certain places on a regular basis. And whatever, whether it was a pothole, a sidewalk, or the little things from the bigger things, really, she still believed in San Francisco as an extraordinary place. And we had to work hard every single day to deal with those challenges no matter what. All right, thank you.